Today we're going to talk about a very interesting story. This is the second episode of the Hustle Diaries. And by the way, if you've not checked out the first episode, make sure you check it out because it's fire. It was a good one. So I need to talk about a very interesting story, and this story I was given by a good friend of mine. He's a good friend of mine. He's a mentor. He's a well-established business person. And when he was giving me this story, I felt it. It was so emotional, and I felt it, as if I was the one going through the same situation. So let me give him a name. I'm going to call him Michael for the sake of this conversation, because I don't want to, talk about his real name and identity. So a few years ago, Michael is a hospital admin. He's an administrator in a hospital. Normal office administrator, does the normal administration work in a hospital setting. And, Michael has a wife. And of course, the wife at this moment, the wife is still a housewife, he's jobless. So he doesn't have much to do really. So Michael goes to work, the wife stays back at home. So after Michael works in this hospital for a couple of years, I think it was 1 to 2 years, 1.5 years, yes. Michael gets some lump sum. He gets around 200,000 and he's like, I need a side hustle. So, he went home, and then he had this discussion with the wife of, just trying to discuss and brainstorm of the best side hustle that they really need to invest in. And then after the long discussion of the day, they settle on selling the auto spares, spare parts to automobiles, motorbikes, cars. No. It was just motorbikes alone, all right? Spare parts for motorbikes. So they get down to it. They start the business. And then, the business was booming. So at this moment, there's just two of them. I mean, it's a small shop worth 200,000, a shop of around 200,000 worth of stock. So at this moment, Michael wakes up in the morning with the wife. They go to the shop. He makes sure that everything is well organized before, going to work, and then leaves the wife in the shop as usual. Again, at this moment, the shop is small, no heavy transactions, no heavy purchases at this moment. So the wife can actually handle what happens in the shop. So that goes on for like another 1 year. So, businesses grow. So to a tune of around 1 year, it was 1.5 year, another 1.5 year later, the business had grown. They had actually, they had lots of clients back and forth. The stock had grown. In fact, at that time, the value of the business had moved from 200,000 all the way to around 1.5 million. So you can imagine the kind of business that we are trying to talk about right here. It's, not doing so well, but again, it's rapidly growing. So at this moment, as I said, I didn't mention this whole stuff. Michael was working somewhere in a village. The business was in a village setting in just a small town. So 1.5 years later, Michael felt the need of moving to a bigger town, because again, we understand business. Sometimes you may never just run your business in a small town and expect it to thrive, because again, at this moment, Michael was having clients from different parts of different counties, because he was, doing supplies and, getting clients from different areas. So at this moment, there's a serious need of moving to a bigger town, because you can never satisfy your client in a small town. If you run business and mostly a shop maybe, you can understand, the magnitude of what I'm trying to say. Because sometimes there are no lights. You can imagine running a business with no electricity for a week. It's not possible. Sometimes maybe you're not able to supply because, there are heavy rains, poor road networks and all that. So there was a very serious need of them relocating to a slightly bigger town. So here's the point. You can actually picture your village, and in every village, there is always a small center. That small center that actually serves you, where you buy your food, where you get your basic needs on a daily basis, right? And then apart from the small center in the village, there's always a slightly bigger town. When you're in the village, you always call it the town. If you need something bigger, something more improvised, or rather more improved services, you'll always say, I'm going to town ABCD. So at this moment, Michael was like, let's move to town X. That was their town. It was their small city. So if you had a business in that town, the villagers will always see you like, you've made it in life. So at this moment, Michael and the wife discuss, and they're moving to the next town. What I didn't mention was that at this moment, when Michael and the wife were, bringing up the company, there are 2 more employees that actually joined the company. And remember, these are employees that are joining the company when the company is really struggling, when you're just starting with a 200 worth of stock in your business. So there's really nothing much in the business. These are understanding employees that when you don't have money to pay their salaries, they'll actually understand. When you get good money, you can always compensate, or rather, pay them double and compensate for the months that you actually didn't pay. So there are 3 or rather 4 main characters in this story. The first one is Michael, the owner of the story. The second one is the wife, all right? Remember, Michael was leaving the wife in the shop, going to work. The next 2, which makes it 4, are the 2 senior employees that actually joined the company at a tender age, when the company was just struggling, when the company was just coming up. So when they're actually relocating from the small center to the nearest town, there is a team of 4 people, all right? 3 employees and Michael as the owner of the business. So well, they get to the next town, they set up their shop, and let me tell you something. The moment Michael moved the shop to the next town, everything blew up. The business was growing like uncontrollably. Things were, in fact, when they moved to the next town, they had to open 2 more branches. 2 more, I can call them outlets, not branches per se, but outlets. Remember the one in the village? It's still there, all right? So they had a total of 3 different outlets, and then 1 headquarters, the main shop, the headquarters. So at this moment, Michael is operating 4 different shops. 2 outlets within the town, 1 outlet in the center where they started, and then the main store, the main shop, where him and the wife and the 2 senior employees spend most of their time. So at this moment, as I told you, things blew up. I mean, I can say God showed up for him, because everything blew up, the business was booming, new clients were coming on board every single day. And in fact, let me just make you understand the magnitude of the business growth. There came a time where Michael was making a sale of up to $500,000 every single day. There is this one particular day that Michael sold an upwards of $1 million in a single day. And this is your stock. Remember, it's not stolen. You've not taken it on loan. You've not done nothing. It's your stock. It's stock you've paid for in cash, and now you have it in your shop and your outlets. So there's this one particular day that Michael made a total sale of $1 million. It was that crazy. Well, we all business people, and anytime a business grows to that magnitude and at that faster rate, you'll always start getting goodwill from people, from your clients, from your banks, from your suppliers. And that's exactly what happens with Michael. So when Michael is rapidly expanding his business, as he gets a goodwill from the banks and the suppliers. So the banks are like, we can always finance you, we can always give you loans to grow your business, expand your business even further, and just make your business grow. Because if you're making it at the moment with your own money, then you can imagine what's going to happen if we give you more money. And then on the other side, suppliers come on board. Suppliers are like, you're really growing and we need our trusted partner in your region. And I think we can now be giving you products on credit. All right? Well, as a business person, again, if you have the 2 options, the banks and the suppliers, you'll definitely go for the suppliers, because the suppliers, you don't pay them back with interest. With the banks, you'll definitely pay back with the interest. So that's exactly what Michael does. He goes the supplier's way. So at this moment, Michael had about 4 suppliers, and these 4 suppliers, in fact, all the 4 suppliers were more than just willing to give him goods on credit, and not just good. At this point when we're talking, Michael has goods worth $50 million in his shop. So you can imagine, when you're talking about suppliers giving you goods on credit, we're talking of big money. There is one supplier that gave him goods to an upwards of $8 million. Another supplier gave him goods to an upwards of $6 million. And, that was the pattern. So there was this one supplier who actually gave him a limit of $1.5 million. Well, considering all other suppliers around you, the other people you're doing business with. And then, all of them are giving you limits worth 5 million plus, 5 million, 6 million, 8 million, 10 million. And then there's this one particular supplier that is like, I'm only giving you 1.5 million. It doesn't just make sense. But, well, he still needed them. So what Michael does is simple. He knew the suppliers through a salesperson. All right. So before even that, he accepts the offer of the 1.5 million worth of credit, which is absolutely okay. And they do I think the first 3 transactions successfully. He's given goods on credit, makes the sale, and pays back the supplier in a record 14 days. That also just explains the magnitude of the transactions Michael was making. Someone gives you, all these suppliers were giving him goods to an upwards of a total of 50 million on credit, and then he has to pay this money in a record 14 days. You see the magnitude of the business? That's exactly what Michael was doing. So this one particular supplier that had a limit, had given him a limit of 1.5 million, of course, Michael got to know about them through the company's salesperson. So the salesperson approaches Michael and is like, Michael, I understand my bosses are not willing to increase your limit as of now just yet, but I can always help you. All right. So the help that the salesperson, we can give him a name, Peter. So the solution that Peter was bringing on board was that apart from the 1.5 million worth of goods that are being given to Michael formally from the company, Peter was ready to top up an additional stock worth 500,000 to make it a total of 2 million. Am I making sense? Listen, there is a formal agreement from the company that the company was willing and ready to give Michael stock worth 1.5 million on credit, payable in 14 days. But, well, looking at other suppliers around, 1.5 million was not just fair. You can clearly confirm that. And the goods were, kind of small, for lack of a better word, in terms of the demand and everything. So Michael was like, let me buy the idea of Peter giving me an extra stock of 500,000 to make it 2 million. So this was a local arrangement that Michael and Peter came up with. And just to make you understand that this was not theft. I know someone would be like, Peter was stealing from the company. This was not theft. Listen, when Michael was paying back the 1.5 worth of goods on credit, when he was making the payments, he was paying it as 2 million because he was paying the 1.5 and the 0.5 million to make it 2 million into the official company's account. So this was not theft. The money, the extra 500,000 was not being paid to Peter's account, not at all. The total amount was being paid to the company's official paybill number, or rather the official account number, right? So again, let's rule out the point of theft. Don't think about that. Peter was not stealing from the company. So that local arrangement actually really favored Michael at this moment, and it went on to, I think, for about 12 months, for about a year plus. So it was a really good deal, and not even a single day did Michael default in any of the payments. Understand? So let me make you understand how Peter ended up, having such privileges in the company. Peter was a salesperson, and I don't know how companies operate. Different companies have different setups, or rather different systems. But in this particular company, they were doing stock taking. But okay, in this particular company was actually doing stock taking once in 3 months. So Peter was like, well, I can always give goods on credit to my trusted clients, and then I make sure that he made sure that the clients paid back before the stock taking dates. Am I making sense? And I hope we are clear up to that particular point. So archive that story. All right, just keep it. We're gonna come back to it. The whole story, the whole Peter and Michael and 500,000 worth of extra goods on credit. Put it on archives. Back to the shop. So at this point, at the shop, business is booming. More employees are coming on board. At this point, Michael is operating with over 30 employees and the shop is fully stocked up. Different clients are coming on board. In fact, at this point, Michael was making supplies to as far as Kampala, Uganda. I mean, he was doing crazy sales. He was doing deliveries all over the country. I mean, regardless of where you are, just place your order and the products are gonna be delivered. That's how crazy business was. So, well, if that is the picture that we already have right now, how crazy the business was, how heavy the transactions were, well, that means there's a lot of money we are handling at the moment. And in fact, when the suppliers started giving Michael goods on credit, they started making crazy sales again. In fact, at this moment, there's a time Michael was making sales of upwards of 2 million, 1.5 million. I think the minimum sale they ever made in a day was like 500,000. But every single day, they were rest assured that they're going to make either 1 million or 1.5 million or 2 million every single day. So listen, when your company is at that stage and these goods are on credit, very few people will always understand the magnitude of having goods worth 50,000 or rather 50 million on credit. Only Michael, at this point, understood the magnitude, or rather the weight of having goods worth 50 million on credit. All right. Remember, I said there are four major important, or rather there are four important characters on this story. There's Michael, and there are the 3 senior employees in the company at this moment. So it was so unfortunate that at this time, only Michael understood the magnitude of having someone's products worth 50 million on credit. The 3 senior employees, they didn't understand the magnitude of the loans, or rather the credit, the goods worth the goods on credit that Michael had. So, well, the first year of this transaction, the first year of Michael taking goods of credit, everything was perfect. In fact, Michael was repaying this money back within 7 days. Remember, the limit was 14 days. You're given goods on credit, regardless of the amount, and you have to pay it back within 14 days. But for Michael, he used to pay this money back within 7 days. So again, you can picture the magnitude of the transactions that was happening in this shop. So listen, the first year was perfect. Things were flowing. Michael would pay the loan on time, or rather the products on time. But as time went by, he started realizing, or rather noticing some problem. That, he used to pay this loan back within 7 days. So now it's starting to take a toll on him. That over time, he's now taking 2 weeks. Sometimes he even delays with 2 days to make the payments. Sometimes he has to write checks and the checks bounce because he's not having enough amount on the account. All right, because again, in the business space, sometimes you are forced to do post-dated checks. So sometimes he does the PD checks, they bounce. Why? The due date comes when there is less amount in the account. You get the point? So at this point, well, there is nothing to raise an alarm just yet. Business is booming. The employees are being paid. He's making some money, but there's a way he's trying to struggle to pay this loan. There's a way he's struggling to raise this amount of money, to pay the suppliers, all right? So, the 7 days, his 7 days of repayment went to around 10 days and 14 days. And then, the 14 days was the limit from the suppliers, remember. So it came a time when he had to push it to around 21 days. And when you push it to 21 days, some interest or other penalties start accruing on the supplier's side. You understand? So things were starting to take a toll on him. Sometimes he had to take goods from one supplier, make the sales for the rest of the week to pay another supplier. You understand? And the moment your business hits that dependency stage where you have to depend on one supplier to sort out the other, you have to depend on one client, for instance, for other people who are in the service industry, maybe, that you have to depend on one client to make payments for you to complete another stalled project, there's a problem. You understand? So over time, Michael started to notice this problem, and it was becoming a trend that over time he was not able to sort out these debts on time. So there is this one particular moment that Michael decides to visit a friend. I think he visited a friend in Nakuru. So he travels. At this moment, he had a van. He had some small van. So Michael takes his van, and it was for personal use. He had other vans for business use, but this one was for personal use. So he takes his van and drives off to Nakuru. On his way to Nakuru, one of his friends one of his business friends, actually was one of his clients that was also a friend, calls him and he's like, hey, Michael, how are you? And Michael is like, I'm good. And he's like, I need some goods from you, around 10 cartons. And Michael does the math and he's like, that's going to cost you 54,000. All right? So it was a Saturday, remember? It was a Saturday, and they used to make less transactions on Saturday. You understand? In fact, some Saturdays, they even used to sell as low as 100,000, as low as 200,000, given the nature of their business and the setting, the locality and everything. On Saturdays, the business was always lower. So Michael tells the guy to go to the shop and, get the products. And that's exactly what the guy does. So the guy goes to the shop, makes the payment, and collects the goods. And in fact, after collecting the goods, he calls back Michael and is like, hey, Michael, I've been served really well. I like your stuff. I thought maybe I'd be harassed or maybe I'll be delayed because you're not there. But the service was top notch and I've paid the amount and everything was cool. So on this particular day, Michael, does his thing in Nakuru and then travels back. So Michael gets to the shop later in the evening. And then, of course, as it was the routine of the company, they always sit down with the team. And when I say the team, I mean the 3 senior employees at this moment, because they're the ones who are holding the topmost positions in the company at this moment. So they sit down with the team and, they have this conversation and be like, how much did you sell? Can you give us a breakdown? And they do exactly that. But on this particular day, they made a total of 34,000 according to the team. So Michael is like, wait a minute. I have someone who called me directly. I referred him to the shop and he was supposed to make payments worth 54,000. And in fact, he confirmed that he made that payment of 54,000. How comes you're telling me that you've only made a total sale of 34,000? Well, the questions, Michael do not ask them. At this moment, Michael is speaking to himself. He's like, how comes you're telling me you've only made a sale of 34,000? Yet I have someone I directly referred to the shop and confirmed to me to have made a total payment of 54,000. It didn't just make sense. So at that moment, Michael played low. He walked out and he was like, let me call this guy again. So Michael called his client and the client actually confirms to have made payment. In fact, at this moment, the client actually forwards the message and Michael confirms that this money was paid to so and so, who is actually one of the staffs, one of the 3 senior staffs in the company at that moment. It was crazy. So it was for the very first time that Michael understood why he was actually struggling to pay the goods that he was given on credit. He actually understood why he was struggling to pay the money back when really everything was just good. Like a couple of months ago, almost a year ago, everything was just perfect. So Michael does something very simple. He calls them on the next Monday, I think. The next Monday, he calls the 3 staffs. And he's like, I need to see your bank statements. And by the way, before we get there, at this moment, it's very important that I should let you know that at this point, Michael is still running the business manually. Michael do not have a system. Michael do not have, computers to show how many goods are still in stock and, which goods are out of stock and who made which sale, or rather who made which transaction. He's just, running it manually. Picks the goods from the suppliers, stocks it in the shop, makes the sale and, place another order after, say, 14 days because that was the routine. All right? So at this moment, he started to realize, oh, okay, so the reason why I'm actually struggling to pay my suppliers on time is because I'm having loopholes in the business. So he pins the team down and he's like, I need to see your statements. At that moment, he starts with a M-Pesa statement. The first 2 employees were more than willing to give their statements, which they did give. And in fact, when Michael checked on their transactions, he actually noticed that they also had some, backdoor transactions. There are dozens of monies that they received from clients, but it wasn't much. They were receiving small monies, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 from the client. But this one particular employee that refused to give the statement was the same employee that actually received the 54,000. So the reason why he actually decided not to give the statement was because he knew the 54,000 worth of transaction would actually reflect on the statement as the first transaction, in fact, on the statement. So he actually refused to give out the statement at all. So the back and forth about giving, or rather producing the M-Pesa statement went on for, I think, 3 months. Yes, it took another 3 months for that particular employee to give out the M-Pesa statement. And when the M-Pesa statement came out, it was crazy. And the reason why I'm telling you it was crazy was because the statement for the past 6 months was reading a total of 3.5 million. Listen, this is an employee that earns an average of about 50,000. This is an employee that is not running any other business. This is an employee that does not have a side hustle. This is an employee that depends in this business 100%. And for the past 6 months, the M-Pesa statement of that particular employee is reading a total of 3.5 million. It was crazy. And of course, Michael had to check all the transaction, and he noticed dozens and dozens and dozens of transactions that, came from his business. All right. In fact, at this moment, there were dozens. Some of the people who were sending money directly to that particular employees were Michael's friends. So they used to go to the shop and they were told, the pay bill number is not working, so you have to send to, my number. And that's exactly what used to happen. So it was really crazy. So that one actually prompted Michael to request for a bank statement, because Michael was like, if this is your M-Pesa statement, then how much money have you been deposited directly to your bank account? So Michael was interested. He was like, I need to see your bank statement. And at that moment, that employee looked at Michael straight in the eye and he's like, hey, Michael, you'd rather kill me, but I'm not giving you my bank statement. And there is this one particular statement that he told Michael. And it was like, Michael, the amount of money that I do have in this bank account that you're requesting for can actually sustain me in Dubai, in the most luxurious hotel in Dubai, for 90 days. I mean, wait a minute. If you're to go to the most luxurious hotel in Dubai, give yourself an average of 100,000 every single day, or even more, just giving any figure, 100,000 every single day. So take 100,000 times 90 days, not forgetting the flights and any other erroneous expenditures that anyone could have when you're having your own free time. So the employee was like, the staff said, the amount of money I have in that account can actually sustain you in the most luxurious hotel in Dubai for 90 days. That was crazy. But again, the script was the same. He's not willing to give out the account statement. It was crazy. So, well, at that moment, Michael had it, on black and white. The reason why he was actually struggling to pay his suppliers was because, the employees have had loopholes in the business. The employees have been stealing from him. Just to make you understand, Michael took the total, did a math. Of course, Michael did a math of the total amount that, or an average amount he had been losing based on what he had on the M-Pesa statement. And then an average, he just tried to guess the amount of money these particular employees could be having in the bank. Because he said that the amount he's having, he would be spending 90 days. The amount he had was worth spending 90 days in the most luxurious hotel in Dubai. So he made a rough calculation, just a rough estimate of the amount of money the employee could be having, and he had an average. He actually realized that the employee for the past 6 months, or rather for the past 12 months, remember the statement came out for around 6 months, but as per the total amount that he's actually having in the account, it suggests that for the past 12 months, the employee was withdrawing an average of 65,000 every single day from the business. Regardless of the size of your business, regardless of the size of your business empire, if your business loses 65,000 every single day, I mean, that's a loss, bro. That's a loss. We are all business people. Tell me that one business that is going to be losing 65,000 every single day and you don't even notice. And actually that also explains to you how big this company was at that moment, how big Michael had, tried as much as he can to grow the company, how big the company was at that particular moment, because he was losing an average of about 65,000 every single day. So, well, to make the long story short, the staff that was actually stealing 65,000 every single day. Wait a minute. Do you understand the meaning of 65,000? This is an employee that was earning an average of about 50,000. You understand? This is an employee that was earning an average of 50,000 from the company. But every single day that employee walks into that office, or rather into that shop, he's rest assured that in the evening he's going to walk out with 65,000. Listen, the 54,000 that Michael noticed was not recorded in the books was just one single transaction. Are you aware how many other transactions maybe were not recorded on that particular day? Because I told you, when Michael is around, they make a minimum sale of 100,000 or 200,000 on Saturdays. But on this particular Saturday, they made around 34,000. So how many other transactions were not recorded on that particular day? That's a lot of money for a business person. So this employee that was actually taking 65,000 every single day from Michael was actually his wife. Wait a minute. Do you understand the magnitude of that revelation? That this is your wife. This is someone you started this business with a stock of 200,000. This is someone who've seen you grow from scratch to a multi-million empire that you currently run. This is someone who sees, or rather feels, or rather experiences your frustration firsthand every single day in the house when your checks are bouncing. This is someone who feels your pain, someone who sees the sleepless nights that you have. This is someone who you give everything. In fact, Michael used to pay the wife around an average of around 50,000. But again, this is your wife. She still got everything back at home. And then you realize that it's the same wife that takes 65,000 from your business every single day. I mean, let me make you understand the magnitude of this. There is this one particular day that Michael was making a payment. He wrote a check of around 200,000, and the check bounced because of only 25,000 shillings. The check did not go through. The check was not cleared just because of 25,000 bob. So the check is actually bouncing because of 25,000 bob, when the wife knows very well that on that particular day, she took 65,000 from the same business. I mean, tell me what women want. That was crazy. That was painful. I felt it firsthand. I was like, how heartless could you be? You see your husband is next to you, complaining to you and lamenting and telling you that the check is going to bounce because of 25,000, but you still have the guts of pocketing a whopping 65,000 from the same husband, from the business, or rather from his business. It doesn't make sense. You understand? It just doesn't make sense. Well, at this moment, things started going south, because, I mean, you can't be losing 65,000 every single day, and worst of it all, it's your wife that does it, and then you expect everything to just be the same. So at this moment, things went south with the family and everything, and, Michael had to go to the drawing board and start thinking of, how to just reorganize everything. And remember when I told you, when everyone gave their bank statement, their M-Pesa statements, we must be honest. The other employees, they also stole some money. They were stealing some small monies, 5,000, 10,000, 2,000. But this one did hit him hard, because it's not just coming from an employee. It's coming from family. It's not just coming from family. It's coming from someone you trust with your most confidential information. It comes from someone who you actually trust with your life. Because if she had the guts of stealing a whole 65,000 every single day, then what was the plan? I mean, what was the target? How much was she supposed to raise? And what was the objective after raising that particular amount? What was supposed to happen afterwards? Those are questions that were actually hitting Michael's mind at that particular moment. It was crazy. So it's always said that when it rains, it actually pours. I'm not sure if the saying is correct or I've said it correctly, but if it rains, it actually pours. The same week that, Michael gets this whole revelation of, the account statement from the wife and the bank statements and, all the monies that have been, laundered from, all the monies that have been taken from the business and all the stuff. That is the same week that some hot soup was boiling from the supplier's side. So there is that story that we kept on archives. You remember it? That one, where Peter was coming in. So it was well known to Peter that his company used to do stock taking every 3 months. You understand? So there was this fine random Monday morning that the bosses in Peter's company just decides to do a random stock take. A very random stock take without notice, without nothing. So they just pull up in at the headquarters where Peter was at that moment, and they're like, we are doing stock taking. No sales to be made today, no supplies to be made today, no payments to be received today. We're doing stock taking. And that's when hell actually broke loose on Michael. Because listen, this is a local arrangement that Michael is having with Peter. This is an arrangement that is not documented on paper. When the stock taking was done on a random Monday, Peter had a deficit of 3.9 million on his side. And listen, there's something I forgot to tell you, that the arrangement Peter had with Michael was not just about Michael alone. It was about many other suppliers, because Peter was a salesperson, and we all understand salespeople are always willing to do anything as long as, they lead in the sales. They make the most transactions in the company, or rather they please their bosses. So this one was one of Peter's strategies in doing that. So Peter was not just supplying Michael alone with goods backdoor, or rather without any record, the local arrangement. Peter had 5 or 6 other clients that he had that particular arrangement. So the total amount of stock that was outside at that particular moment was totaling to, it wasn't 3.9, it was 2.9 million. So when, of course, from the company's perspective, when that was realized, it was theft to them. So, the police came on board, Peter was arrested, the DCI came on board, and the bosses were like, we need you to give us the money. So Peter was very honest, and he's like, hey, wait a minute, I didn't steal from you. This is a local arrangement I have with my clients, that being that you're giving them a lower limit when it comes to the goods you're supplying them, I always offer them an extra amount of, an average of about, about $500,000, more or less, and then they pay it back. In fact, you can check in your accounts, these people pay the amount. They don't pay to me, they pay direct to the company. But at that moment, because it's not documented, because there are no papers that have been signed, there are no formal agreements to justify that, it was a criminal case. That was pure theft on the company's side. So what happens is, the DCI and the police are called, the Peter is arrested, and is like, now we need you to give us, to do one favor for us. And that is, we need you to take us to each and every client that you have this local arrangement with. And who was the first client? You guessed right. That was Michael. So the team drives all the way from Nairobi to Michael's shop. And at that particular moment, Michael was away. Michael had, gone out to get more clients and do some supplies. So he wasn't in. So the police come on board. They, cover the shop. They've actually, closed the shop and, barricaded the shop, and it was very ugly. And, when that happens, it's never just about the supplier. It's also about your image as far as the public is concerned. Because remember, some of the clients are just people next door. These are people who buy from you every single day. So you can imagine that image. The police, the DCI, there are like 5 Land Cruisers here, like 2 double cabin, pickups here, and it was ugly. So apart from just the client demanding for his money, there was also the public image, the brand that you've been struggling to build every single day. So Michael is called, and he's like, the police are here. Actually, it's the DCI that called, and he's like, we are DCI from Nairobi, and there's a guy called Peter. Do you know him? And Michael is like, yeah, I know Peter. So he's like, Peter has been stealing from the company, and it's been realized that you are an accomplice in the case. You've been colluding with Peter to steal from the company, and that's a criminal case. So Michael leaves where he was, drives back to the shop. At this point, almost all the employees ran away. It's only the wife that stayed back. Well, they had issues, but she still stayed back. She was still around. They were solving the issue. They wouldn't close the shop because they have the issue. But, he was still around. She was still around. So the wife is arrested, and they were detaining the wife until Michael comes back. All right? So Michael comes on board. The wife is released, and then they handcuff Michael, and then they collect every product that belonged to that particular company. I mean, you can see them on the shelves. All the products, the company, the label, the products with the company's label. They collected all the products with that company's label. So it's changed because remember, at this moment, Michael only had a credit worth 0.5 towards Peter's arrangement. But when the DCI and the police and everyone came on board, they were like, all the goods that were on the shelf on that particular moment were actually related to the case. All right. So they didn't even consider the fact that there's the formal 1.5 million worth of goods that Michael, took from the company legally. They didn't even consider the fact that there are goods that had not been sold out from the previous orders. They collected literally everything. So that means if the clients come the next day to buy that particular product, it will actually be out of stock. So, well, that is not the biggest concern at the moment. The biggest concern is Michael is on hot soup. So Michael is picked by the police. He's detained. He's put in a police cell for, I think, 2 days, and things were really ugly. So at that particular moment, Michael found his way out. I think he paid some cash bail. Of course, the business was not doing so well, given all the challenges. But again, Michael had some money. I mean, he was a business person. He had some money, personal money, and, friends and all that. So he actually managed to raise the cash bail. He was bailed out. And when he traveled back, he got an empty house. The wife was long gone. He went to school. He was told that the kids were actually transferred to another school. And that's when Michael actually realized that the wife had moved to Nairobi, changed her phone number, and just vanished. Listen, this is a woman you started with from scratch. You didn't have the money. You didn't have the finances. You didn't have the business. You started the business with her. She saw the struggles and then still had the guts to steal from you. And not just stealing 65,000 every single day. That's a lot of money. And then, of course, it's the wife that caused the problem. All right? It's the wife that caused the problem. I understand there is the local arrangement, but when the DCI and the police came on board, Michael was not able to raise that amount because, listen, when the DCI came on board, Michael was given the list of the products he took on the local arrangement. He was told to pay that amount. And, of course, there are those penalties and charges and fines and everything. But at that moment, he was not able to raise that amount of money because the business was really struggling at that particular moment. The business was really struggling. In fact, I told you he was struggling to pay the suppliers. The suppliers that are actually coming for him, he used to struggle to pay them back. So he was really badly off. So the amounts, this guy, in fact, when the DCI and the the suppliers came on board, they valued all the products with their brand on the shelves and came up with a total value of 3.5 million. 3.5 million, yes. Remember 3.5 million, that was not the only money he was supposed to pay back to the suppliers was around 2 million. The extra 1.5 million were goods he had actually paid for. But because it was already a case and things were messed up at that moment, they valued every single product they found on the shelf. So it was coming to around 3.5 million. At that particular moment, I can confirm to you, Michael was not able to raise 3.5 million. So Michael is not able to raise 3.5 million when the wife is having money that can sustain her in Dubai for 90 whooping days. And again, she wasn't even willing to give out a single cent to bail Michael out. So Michael comes back, he starts from scratch again. So at this point, the outlets are still operating, but business has gone down. Remember, the rumors have gone round that, Michael has been auctioned because of a loan. Some of them, they were like, Michael steals from people because, the ones who were around there, they had the police talking on phone and everything. So the rumors were going out there that he used to steal from people, stealing from companies. And now in fact, at this moment, Michael lost up to 90% of his clients. Just a few. A business, let me make you understand this. A business that was making an average of $1 million every single day on weekdays went back to making 15,000 every single day. I mean, that was crazy. Do you know the magnitude of dropping down from $1 million to 15,000 or 20,000 or even 100,000 a day? That was a huge drop in sales. So it really affected Michael at that particular moment. So I think it was a couple of days later, a couple of weeks later, the wife reaches back to Michael. And he's like, he calls and Michael receives the phone. Of course, when, she was making the call, she had made the attempts to making the call because again, if she did such kind of a mess, if she caused such kind of a mess to Michael, he wouldn't just call him directly. So of course, before calling Michael directly, he talked to so many people around, the bishop, the pastors, the mother, just the relatives and the people who she actually knew Michael would listen to. So after, making all those calls, she calls Michael and he's like, hey, Michael, I'm sorry. Well, the apology wasn't a bad thing. I must, say that it was really good. It was really, really good to apologize. But at the back of Michael's mind was like, well, the wife is calling me and the whole issue, she actually knows that the whole issue has not been sorted. And when she was calling, she was actually requesting to come back to Michael. So she really knew that the issue was not solved just yet. And actually Michael told him. So when Michael saw that the wife was more than willing to come back, he thought that she's coming back with the money. But lo and behold, the wife comes back with no money. Well, we're not sure whether she had the money but decided not to give, but she came back and gave no money. So again, she's back right here, seeing Michael struggling, seeing Michael struggle to raise this money and pay back the loan. And remember, let me make you understand of something. I told you Michael had several suppliers. When the other suppliers noticed that Michael had a problem with one supplier, and actually the problem was colluding with the salesperson to steal from the company, all other suppliers froze their offers. They dropped their limits to zero as far as Michael was concerned. So he had no supplies. And in fact, when that was happening, he had a total debt of 11 million. You understand the magnitude of this? I mean, this whole stuff is happening when you're having a total debt of 11 million that you've not paid back. And then the same people that you've not paid back are saying they are not giving you more goods on credit. And they're giving you an ultimatum to pay that 11 million back within 7 days. It was crazy. Really crazy. So at this time, Michael was at a fix. He actually switched off his phones for, I think, He told me 21 days. Yes, he switched off his phone for 21 days. He didn't talk to anyone. He didn't respond to everyone. The business was still running. He had tons of letters from advocates and companies demanding, the payments to be made, and things were just crazy at this particular moment, really crazy on him. So when the wife was calling to come back, he actually thought that the wife was coming with the money, but in real sense, the wife didn't come with any money. So, the wife comes back, goes back to the shop again, because at this moment, Michael didn't have any otherwise. He didn't have any other employee to trust again. And even the employees to work for him, not even trusting, he didn't have any other employees to work for him. So the wife goes back to the shop again. And at this moment, they are making 20,000, 15,000, at most 30,000. A company, or rather a shop that was making up to $1 million every single day. Well, the most important part of it, or rather the most weighing part of it, was Michael's wife actually stealing from him. So at this moment, Michael was an easy guy. He trusted the wife back, put him back on the shop, and went silent for a whopping 21 days, not talking to anyone, not picking any calls, not replying to any message. So Michael goes silent for 21 days, and then on the 22nd day, Michael just wakes up in the morning and is like, I'm not going to run away from my problems. I got to face them. So Michael takes his bag, packs some 2 or 3 clothes, and then travels to Nairobi to face his suppliers. So, he didn't go to each and every supplier. He went to this one particular supplier. So he walks in, and he actually owed this supplier a total of 6 million. So he walks into this supplier's office and is like, I'm right here. I don't have the money and I need more stock. So you either arrest me or give me more stock on credit. So the CEO of the company looks at him and just smiles. And he's like, I think you're crazy. And Michael is like, yeah, I also know I'm crazy because I don't have the money to pay you and I don't have stock in my shop. And the only way I can actually pay you is when I make sales. So I don't know what happens. Again, sometimes God works miraculously in business. God works miraculously, when things are really thick. So this time, the CEO of the company tells him to go and wait at the security's office, somewhere at the gate, outside the building, and that the CEO is going to have a board meeting with other directors about his case, and then, he's going to get back to him. So Michael does exactly that. He sits with the security at the gate for 2 good hours. After 2 hours, the CEO calls him and is like, I'm really not sure of the kind of God you worship, but come to my office. So at that moment, Michael started feeling like, he started getting some sigh of relief. He felt like something was actually coming up. So he goes to the office and the CEO sit him down and is like, I've talked to my directors and we've looked at your statements. They were really good before that incident happened. So we've decided we're going to help you. Because again, the reason why we're deciding to help you is because you are our biggest client within your region. So the CEO tells Michael a few things. Number one, that the goods worth 6 million that we had supplied you, we were targeting a profit of around 1.5 million from the goods. All right. So out of the 6 million, 1.5 million was supposed to be our profit. So first thing, we are writing off the profit. So the 6 million is actually coming to 4.5 million. See how God works. All right. Secondly, Michael was the biggest client of that company in the region. And the company was just planning to have a promotional event within the region. And that promotional event was supposed to be sponsored by the company, and part of the money was supposed to go to Michael. Because there's some merchandise to be done, there's some branding to be done, Michael was supposed to be there, so the company was supposed to pay Michael for doing exactly that. And that whole process, the money that was supposed to go towards Michael and the merchandise and the promotional stuff that Michael was supposed to organize was coming to a total of 1.5 million. So the 4.5 million is actually coming back to 3 million. Am I making sense? And then the remaining 3 million, the suppliers are like, out of this 3 million, we've decided to write off another 1 million because we needed to get back in business. So the remaining balance is actually 2 million. See how God works. I mean, who knew that someone who you owe 6 million would actually write off more than half the amount to 2 million. I mean, a total of 4 million actually was written off for him. Tell me who that is if not God. Am I making sense? So that happens. And then on top of that, the company was giving Michael an additional stock of 1 million on credit. And now the most interesting part was that the 2 million balance, he was told to only pay 30,000 every month. I mean, every other supplier would be like, the remaining balance, pay me in 2 installments or 3 installments or within 6 months. But for this case, he was told to pay 30,000 every month until the day he's going to clear that balance. And then on top of that, you are given stock worth 1 million to start afresh. That was God. That was God. And that's exactly where Michael was. So that particular moment, I mean, of course, he went to other suppliers, but they didn't listen to him. But now he went back confidently with goods worth 1 million. That was a good one. You know, the people around saw another truck coming in and offloading goods worth 1 billion. And, you know, it restored the confidence. And Michael started, you know, going back to business. And the sales started going up over and over again. In fact, the promotion that was supposed to come from that company, it came. And Michael was the host. So that restored the customer confidence in Michael again. And the sales started going up every single day. Every single day the sales started going up. So from 15,000 to 20,000 to 100,000 to somewhere around 200,000 every single day. So this time around, it didn't go back to the normal 1 million or 500,000 a day. It was, you know, somewhere around 100, 200,000. But still, that was a good business as far as Michael was concerned on that particular, in that whole experience. You understand? So again, God really works. But this time round, you know, Michael was twice as, you know, clever than before. We are told, once bitten, twice shy. So Michael had to invest in his business afresh. He was like, number one, system. So he had to invest in a system where when he brings in products, every single, even if it's a product worth 10 Kenyan shilling, it has to be recorded in the system. It has to be noted down. The stock has to be, you know, tracked on the system. You know how much products you're left with, how much product are out of stock, the products you need to order. Actually, the system was so intense to an extent that you can actually trace who made which sale, who sold what. You understand? So on the receipt, there's a place where your name is written. So if you sell a particular product, it's written down there that you sold this particular product on that particular day with the particular time and the name of the client who paid via M-Pesa. You understand? That was how serious and how intense that transaction, the system was. So, well, everything went back to normal. And, well, at the moment as we're speaking, Michael is really doing well. He's doing really well in his business. But most importantly, they are still happily married with a wife. I said he's 1 in a million. I mean, if it were me, I don't think I'd be having the wife at the moment. But for him, I don't know how it worked. I don't know how they sorted the issue. But again, it's very important to make you understand that the wife did not bring any money back to date. No money was brought back, but they're happily married. So that tells you how good Michael actually is, how understanding he is. But sometimes it's not good to be too understanding. More so when family and business are concerned. When you bring family and business together, do not be understanding because you're going to die poor. All right? And that was our story of the day. So the moral of the story here is that number one, family and business, you really need to be very careful that when you're trusting your family and particularly your wife. I know there are successful couples in business. There are couples who've done business and things are perfectly well. But again, you really need to be careful as far as family is concerned because these are people who are going to steal from you and there's nothing much you can do. You won't kill them. You won't arrest them because again, you are arresting the mother of your children who is going to feed your children. Family and business, try as much as you can to separate family and business. But if you must do business with family, have proper systems, have proper agreements on how the work is being done, have formal agreements and formal work setups, or other work systems that are actually going to help you, rather cushion you from these loopholes that we have, that some of us, face in business. The second is that system, and I say system. Always have a working system. Invest in a working system in a business. There are softwares out here nowadays. There are dozens of softwares that are available online. Invest in a system. If you don't invest in a system, you're going to lose money. So the reason why the wife actually stole money from Michael to that magnitude is because Michael did not have a system. He did not have a system to verify who made the sale, or where did the money go, how much money was sold in a day. So system is a very important. In fact, he didn't even know how much stock he was left with in the first place. So if you don't even know the amount of stock you're left with, how will you know whether you've been stolen from or not? System. Number 3, try as much as you can to have formal agreements when it comes to your transactions. You see the case that Michael had with Peter? Just be patient. There's a reason why the company gave him a limit of 1.5 million. All right? So just be patient. I want to believe that if he did his transactions right, maybe later in the future, the company would have increased the limits. Or maybe if he just, decided to meet the CEO of the company, or, some of the directors, maybe the limit would have been increased. All right? So those are the 3 major moral lessons that we need to pick up from this story. Number 1, family, and particularly your wife, or rather your spouse, in business, not a good thing. And if you must include them in business, have proper systems in place. Number 2, system. Invest in softwares that are going to make your work easier, that are going to help you track each and every transaction in business. Number 3, have formal agreements in business. If you have any agreement with anyone, make sure you have it written down on paper, stamped by your lawyer and anyone that might matter when things decide to go south, as they did. All right? The last one. Once bitten, twice shy. If your wife did that to you, I don't think it's wise taking them back. Michael has his own reasons for bringing the wife back. But if that happens to you, no, not bring them back. Maybe they're coming back for a more improvised scheme to steal from you in a more, in a much clever way that you'll never even notice in your life ever again. So think about it. Let's meet on the next episode. Thank you. Make sure you subscribe, give us a comment, like, share as much as you can, and make sure we catch up on the next episode. Thank you.